recently went to a local crossbow dealer to check out some modern crossbows. I had done a lot of research online and I had narrowed it down to two that I was most interested in: the Mission Sub 1 and the Ravin R10. These are both fairly top-of-the-line crossbows. This particular store that I went to had the Ravin R10, but they only had a Mission Sub 1 XR, which is a slightly more powerful model than the regular Sub 1, which is already extremely powerful, shooting an arrow at 385 feet per second. I was able to shoot both of them upstairs in a special area at 20 yards from a target, along with a much less expensive Barnett Raptor FX3 to use for comparison's sake. As this being my first professional crossbow experience, here are my takeaways. The Mission Sub 1 XR was much harder to cock than I had anticipated. I mean, I could do it, but I had to apply quite a bit of force, and at my height, 6 feet 5 inches, I'm not looking to throw my back out anytime soon. I only cocked and decocked it the one time, and I guess if I were to do it 100 times, I would eventually develop a technique that would make it easier on my back. But even then, it would not be the easiest thing in the world to do. And my salesman told me the Barnett, which he cocked, and just about all pro-level crossbows require similar amounts of force to cock. That is, unless you get a model that uses a crank. I know you can get an accessory crank for the Sub 1 and the Raptor FX3 for quite a bit more money, but with the Ravin, the crank is already a built-in integrated mechanism, and that's the only way you're even able to cock it. The Ravin R10 is so easy to cock, it was fascinating. When I first saw someone demonstrating this crank cocking system on YouTube, I rolled my eyes and I was like, shh, that crossbow looks like it's made for an old man. My, how opinions can change. Now I feel like if you buy an expensive crossbow and it doesn't have a crank system, then you about lost your mind. That one feature alone made me start gravitating to liking the Ravin R10 more. The Ravin felt the best in the hand. It was the most comfortable to hold, and the narrowness of the limbs was so much nicer than I thought it would be. The Sub 1 and the Barnett felt bulky and clumsy, especially the Sub 1, which also felt front heavy. But the Ravin felt streamlined and almost like you were holding a gun as opposed to a bow. I found the Sub 1 XR slightly harder to keep steady and aim over the Ravin and Barnett. The weight of the Sub 1 XR is 7.6 pounds, while the Ravin R10 is 6.8, and the Barnett Raptor FX3 is 6.4 pounds. I was impressed with the scopes on all of them. I probably liked the Sub 1 scope the best, but even the scope on the Barnett was very nice. The Barnett definitely seemed quite okay for the price. No real complaints after just one test shot. It just sort of looked and felt average, but its accuracy was great at 20 yards. Also, at 20 yards, I really didn't notice any discernible difference in the speed of the arrows or the loudness of the shots. The arrows all went so fast that it was like you were shooting a rifle. The Ravin is supposed to do 400 feet per second, the Sub 1 XR 410, and the Raptor FX3 350 feet per second. In some weird little kind of way, I was disappointed in the feel of all three of them. I know they have a lot of metal components, but there's still a fair amount of plastic here and there, like the grip, the buttstock, the quiver. I guess they use plastic to keep the weight down, but it cheapens the overall feel and appearance a little. The Ravin and the Sub 1 just had a slightly overpriced feeling to them. And on a separate note, what's up with all the camo colors? One thing I like about the Ravin R10 and the Mission Sub 1 is that you can get them in gray and black respectively. There are so many crossbows on the market that only come in 2 different shades of ugly camo colors. Not everybody buys a crossbow to hunt with and needs to blend in with the trees. I feel like every crossbow on the market should come in at least one color that isn't camouflage. Just my opinion. I'll probably catch hell for that comment. Anyway, I ended up getting a gray Ravin R10. Taking everything into consideration, it was my favorite of the 3. I'll have to see how it holds up through the years to know if I'll be totally satisfied with it. Now, there's plenty of other videos on YouTube showing people firing the Ravin R10, so instead of repeating what others have done, although I'll probably end up doing that in a future video. But for now, I'm just gonna show you some really well lit, up close and personal video of how this crossbow looks. Alright, there we have it, the Ravin R10 crossbow. Now on the front, there's these rubber bumper thingies that are going to go against the ground when you're cranking it. Has these little wheel things that help guide the arrow. They depress and they just help guide the arrow because it's a frictionless system. That thing there is metal, a little bracket. Top view here, this your finger guards, that's all plastic. Your grip, plastic. You've got the underneath it, you've got the quiver, which you press that little button there, plastic, and it releases the quiver. And on the other side is the crank. Same way you press it, releases that. You can switch those around if you want. You can have the quiver on one side or the crank on the other. However you prefer. Let's take a look at this quiver. Mostly plastic. These 2 little insert pieces are rubber that holds the arrows in place. Rest of it plastic. Arrows slip out. And let's look at the tips. So it comes with these filled tips. You unscrew them and you can replace them with other tips like broadheads if you're going to be into hunting. Just unscrew them, and then you've got your carbon fiber shaft. Your Ravin logo. You're supposed to only use Ravin arrows. I don't know how true that is. Then you got your plastic fletching and your plastic knock on the end that unscrews too, and you can change those out. So let's look at the cables and the string. It's got 4 cables, and this is how they connect. Go around that orange thing and then connect to that knob. And notice the dots. See those 2 little dots? The cables should go between the dots. Maybe hard to see. You can see a little bit better there. If the cables are not going in between the dots, then you have a problem. And the timing's going to be off and the bow's not going to fire properly. So looking at my brand new bow, they're not exact. One of them seems to be off maybe a 1/16 of an inch, but they're both going through the dots. Now the bow string wraps around the cam like that. Follow my finger and it connects to that thing there. Okay, now you see the little rubber bumpers for noise suppression. It's got those. Now let's look at the scope. It's got these little flip up caps to keep dust out. You can still see it through it fine with the caps down, but if you want to open them, go ahead. On the top, you've got these metal covers that reveal the dials that you use to change the up and down part of the scope and left and right. And that dial there changes the illumination to either none to red or green. This dial changes whatever the speed should be. So you should leave that on 400 to start with. That's what it's supposed to shoot at with the arrows it comes with. Now this is showing you what it looks like through the scope. Trust me, it looks way better than this if you're looking at it in person. The camera's not doing it justice. So that's without illumination. That's with the red, and it's got different levels of intensity of the illumination. I like the green myself, but now from the middle of one cam to the other, it should be 10.5 inches. So you have the fire and safety switch is aluminum, so is the trigger. Now this part is all plastic, and that piece there looks like it's plastic covered with rubber. Same there. And on the back we have a picture of a raven, I guess that is. Now it can be cocked on either side. That's kind of cool. So if you're left or right-handed, either side. Now this button is very important, which you'll use. You'll depress that when you're cocking it. So the cocking crank thing goes on. It's a little jiggly, I must say. It seems to stay on there. It's magnetic, and it just jiggles a little bit more than I would like. But so you depress that button at the end, and then you slide down the little mechanism thing. There's the nylon band, and you just push that forward until it clicks. It'll be in safe mode when you do that. And now you just crank it on up. Keep cranking. Like say, this is easier to do if I had it on the floor, but since my camera's on a tripod, I just left it on the table. And you just ratchet it up and crank it till it gets to the end. And you'll feel it slip. That's when you'll know it's fully cocked. And you take the crank out. And see how narrow it's gotten now? Look at those limbs. Look how narrow they are. That's one of the cool things about this one. And if you're cranking it, you can let go of it. And see, it's not going to go anywhere. The crank. You can rest halfway through if you want to rest. Whatever. Now you can also silent crank it. If you push that button and crank it, then it won't make any noise as it's cranking. Like if you're a hunter and you don't want to scare the deer. But you just got to be careful not to let go of that button, otherwise the crank will go flying and probably break your knuckle. So after you cock it, then you can put an arrow in. I'm not going to do that because I'm inside. And then to decock it, you just press that button in and then go forward a little bit and then start backing up to decock it. And it's a little bit, like I say, if this was on the ground, it'd be easier. But it's a little bit more difficult to decock than it is to cock, actually. Still easy, though. And once you finish doing that, remove the handle. Now I'm going to show you a little secret. See this little hole here? Put your little switch to fire. And then put an arrow in it and let it click in place. And then get yourself an Allen wrench. And stick it in that hole. Push until it clicks. And it'll go back into safe mode. And that'll release this mechanism. So if you want to store your bow, like store it away for the winter time or for a long period of time, you can wind up the mechanism so the nylon part's not showing. So there you have it, the Ravin R10 crossbow. That's the one I decided to go with after about 20 hours of research.